The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good evening and welcome to my State of Mind. I am Dan Yorke. To suggest it's been a week is the ultimate in understatement, right? So let's just move to it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Look, before we get to the conversation of Washington impeachment and all of that with our special guest this evening, I just wanted to make a note. Governor Raimondo had her first COVID briefing at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium this week, and true to mercenary political form, she didn't answer any questions, and she's not going to be answering any questions, at least in general, to the press, because she's under a tight leash right now with the Biden administration. That's all kind of part of the professional politics of a nominee for the cabinet. Look, I applaud the governor for her growth. The way she's presented herself, I think, is embarrassing, disingenuous, and unfortunate for the electorate. To suggest that she was more or less plucked by Joe Biden to save the commerce of the country, that her 24/7 loyalty and obsession with the state had to be disrupted for this United States public service is nonsense. She competed for that job, and she should be honest about it. And the idea that even Tim White, for instance, has to chase her down to ask a couple of questions, well, it tells you about what's a priority. In the meantime, and we'll talk more about that coming, but in the meantime, Rich Arenberg is my guest. He's a lifer in the U.S. Senate, now teaching at Brown, to reflect on all that's happened in the impeachment. Here's what the network had at press time on Thursday when we recorded the show for the weekend.
The House of Representatives impeached President Trump on Wednesday for inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol.
The terrorists who stormed this building plan to hang the vice president, kill the speaker, and topple our government.
Mr. Trump becomes the only president to be impeached twice.
Well, we said if we didn't remove him, he would do it again.
While National Guard troops camped out in the Capitol, 222 Democrats were joined by 10 Republicans in voting yes, making it the most bipartisan impeachment vote in U.S. history.
I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
Most of the GOP argued for unity in the president's defense, even if some admitted he bears responsibility.
A vote to impeach will further fan the flames of partisan division.
But Democrats want Mr. Trump held accountable.
People died because of the big lies that were being told.
After weeks of false election claims,
it was a rigged election,
culminating in last week's fiery speech.
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
While the trial isn't expected to start until after President Trump leaves office, a conviction by 2/3 majority of the Senate would likely bar him from running for president again.
My fellow Americans,
President Trump did not mention the impeachment in a video released by the White House, but he did tell his supporters there should be no more violence.
No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence.
In a statement, President-elect Joe Biden says he hopes the Senate can balance the trial with working on the nation's business.
Professor Richard Arenberg from Brown University is one of our go-to guys here to understand Washington and specifically the Senate. His expertise lies there from a professional point of view, spending decades, working in the Senate as a senior aide. And Rich, Happy New Year. Welcome to the show. It's never been crazier in this country. Before we get into logistics of the Senate and politics of this impeachment, as an American, as a veteran of the Senate, as someone who lived in that building and who watched this last week and the aftermath, what's your head and your heart telling you about what's going on or what happened?
Yeah, well, I have to say I was very deeply shaken by watching the events at the Capitol last week, as I spent 34 years on Capitol Hill, and I think every single day I went into work, I looked up at that dome and felt inspired, felt the sense of history, the things that had happened there, the the Capitol is the greatest symbol of American democracy. And of course, it's that democracy that's important, but that symbol, it felt very personal to me. My wife and I were married in the Capitol building, in front of one of those arch windows looking down the mall towards the Washington Monument, and watching, these armed insurrectionists pounding at that very window, and then seeing all the video of what went on inside the Capitol. And I've talked to many former colleagues, many people on the Hill in the last week, and I think the full unveiling of everything that went on there is where we still every day we see new video, and the situation just gets worse, I think. And then to add on top of that, the role of the President of the United States in inciting this riot at the Capitol, and the ongoing continuing threat to the nation's capital and to state capitals around the country. I think, this is a very distressing time, and it's a time we all have to fight to defend our democracy.
On the talk show on WPRO weekdays 3 till 6, I've had some pushback. Well, welcome to my 4 years in evaluating Donald Trump. I think it's pretty clear I'm no fan. But there's this pushback that I've received from some folks, which is alarming to me, and it's this. Well, hey, Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the protests, over this whole, cop thing all across the country, and burning buildings. And look, it's very hard to weave through understanding why people in protest just take property down, looting, fires, tearing down,
Sure.
People whose lives and businesses have been invested and gone flash because of a mob. But I've tried to distinguish between, listen, any personal property destruction is abhorrent and ought to be criminally
Sure.
charged and
Sure.
pay for it. But the distinction between what would be common personal property, valuable and important and priceless as it is, versus the nation's capital.
Exactly.
Are you
Exactly.
are you able to distinguish between the two?
Sure. This absolutely.
A lot of folks are having trouble discriminating between the two concepts.
This was an effort to bring down to bring down the government of the United States. I mean, what was going on in that Capitol on that day was a constitutionally required joint session of both houses of Congress to count the votes already cast and certified to determine who is the next president of the United States. And this was an armed mob, and it wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. And it was nothing more than an effort to stop the federal government from taking the next legal step to a peaceful transition of power, something that has been emblematic of American democracy around the world.
You're not a sociologist, but I'm because of your vast decades of experience at the Senate and your love for the real and symbolic, place that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to find the words that settle this notion, that dispute and put away this notion that it's not unlike every other protest that got out of hand and destroyed property in America this year? Or in the recent past?
We were very fortunate that more lives weren't lost. We were very fortunate that I mean, there's plenty of criticism for the role of the Capitol Hill police force, and there'll be lots of investigations. But if it weren't for a number of very brave Capitol Hill policemen, the members of Congress, both in the Senate and the House, would not have been brought out to safety. We were only minutes away from that mob breaking into the two chambers where senators and members of the House were. I hate to even think about if that crowd had found Nancy Pelosi or AOC or Mike Pence, for that matter. I mean, we've all seen that clip of the crowd chanting, hang Mike Pence. There were elements in that crowd quite capable of carrying out those threats.
Can you imagine if what we hear last night, and again, you folks, you're seeing this over the weekend, so that would be, percolating Wednesday into Thursday.
Right.
On the congressional side, is this notion that there might have been some House members that helped in the planning of this, in the sense that there were some tours past COVID protocols that were going on. That's being looked at right now. Can you imagine if there was any elected inside aid to this? What kind of trauma that's going to deal Congress?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah. I think it's not a question of if. I think it's a question of how extensive was the role and what was the knowledge about what was going to be carried out that day. But it's clear, for example, that some of these individuals were given a tour of the Capitol building, which could only occur. The building has been shut down because of COVID. So it's only possible with the approval of a member of Congress for their staff or themselves to provide such a tour the day before. And, there are going to be a number of investigations here.
Yeah, we'll see how that meets out. I need to tap into your expertise on how the Senate operates now with this impeachment, and we'll do so with Rich Arenberg from Brown University when we come back. Stay with us. Rich Arenberg, professor at Brown University and decades veteran in the U.S. Senate. All right, Rich, so here we are, take two. Whole different kind of impeachment. This is up and down in a second, literally in the House. Are you concerned that there was no, even in the impeachment process itself, any defense from the White House or the president here? Do you think it's constitutionally legitimate for the House to have acted so quickly just on a floor debate?
Well, I think the facts were perfectly clear. So I think probably hearings were not necessary. I would have preferred, I think, to see more process, but I think the timing here is unique, and I think the House had to move very quickly. I think the Senate will move more deliberately because this is the actual trial phase of the impeachment process.
So here's a thing that's going to be fascinating, right? So Mitch McConnell has telegraphed some empathy for an actual conviction of the president, yet he doesn't want to move the timetable forward, right? So, and as the Senate has lost its majority with the Georgia elections,
Chuck Schumer will be in charge.
Yeah, you couldn't have written this book.
Yeah. Well, if you did write it, a publisher would have rejected it as just too unreal to be believable.
Right. So you've got that going on, and so you've got a 50-50 tie that brings the Vice President Kamala Harris any weight in tipping the majority. Okay, so they at best will convene, it seems, the day before the inauguration, but likely not even, right? So,
right. I think this trial is going to take place after the inauguration.
And therein lies an interesting applicability to the constitutional authority that this process will have. Before we get into that in a second, do you visualize the same kind of trial that we saw in the first run with impeachment managers, including Congressman David Cicilline, presenting cases, a defense from the White House?
Yes. Although, it's not clear who the defense lawyers will be. I noted this morning that the president is even attacking Rudy Giuliani at this point, and the thought had been that he would be the lead defense attorney. So that's still an open question, but there will be a trial, and there will be House managers, and I think the statements made by Mitch McConnell are very important. I'm not sure where that's going yet, but if he were to support conviction, that really opens the door, because other members of the Republican caucus in the Senate would then be more open to really weighing the evidence and making a real decision. So this could be much more of a real trial than the first one was.
Well, the 10 House members on the Republican side who voted for impeachment lend some credibility to that idea. Liz Cheney's matter-of-fact description of this, I think, was the most disciplined and concise discussion of it.
And don't underestimate how courageous those 10 Republicans had to be.
Sure.
I mean, the Republican Party, I think has played a role in it. It clearly played a role in enabling all of this. But this was a vote in which I think everybody who voted on impeachment yesterday had in mind that they were engaging in a physically brave act. I mean, I've seen courageous votes over my years in the Senate, but we think of courageous votes in terms of elective office, in terms of political vulnerability. It's a courageous vote because you might lose your office. But any one of these members of Congress now, I think, has to worry about, violence, either in Washington or back home.
When we come back, last segment, I just want to touch base on the future for Donald Trump vis-a-vis what could be in this verdict. We'll be right back.
Sure.
Stay with us. Rich Arenberg from Brown University with vast experience in the Senate. Rich, one of the things that is on the table here is not just a potential, and I still think it's an upset, but who knows, verdict from the Republicans at 2/3 of the Senate to convict. It only takes a majority of the Senate, though, to also add a little caveat, which is a second vote to say he can never run again, meaning the president. I only have a couple of minutes here. Tell me, do you think that's likely?
Well, I still have to say at this point, I think conviction is, I won't say unlikely, but I certainly would not say likely. I mean, it takes, as you said, it takes 2/3. That's 17 Republicans who would have to vote with all 50 Democrats in order to get to that level. And that step of removal is necessary if the Senate is then going to take the additional step, which only requires a majority vote to prohibit Donald Trump from ever holding a public office again.
Well, isn't it really? It really is all about that, right? So
yes, I think that's right.
So the nature of the vote to convict will be completely weighted by a simple majority vote to prevent a future vote, because let's not kid ourselves. he's out of office during the trial. He will be gone. And so a lot of folks will be wondering, what's the point?
What's the point here? Right, right. And I think you're right in saying an important part of the point is prohibiting this man from serving in public office in the future. But I think also I think it's important. It's critical for the Congress to speak, for the Senate to weigh these facts. We've had impeachment trials before, not for presidents, but for other officials, cabinet officials, and judges who have been impeached after resigning from office, for example.
Yeah. All righty. I only have 20 seconds here. We're going to make it through this. Now, obviously, we'll make it, but it's
somehow I always try to hold on to the optimism. Yeah, I mean, you can find silver linings here. Institutions that stood up very well. I'm proud of the military leadership. All of the living former secretaries of defense who have spoken out. You know, including people like Dick Cheney, which I think, you know, we've seen a good deal of that. Yeah. And I think there's a real division in the Republican Party on going forward here.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a story for many other days. We'll check back in with you. Rich Arenberg, Brown University. Thank you for your expertise. And your feeling about
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
We'll be right back with a final word on My State of Mind. Stay with us. Don't forget, you find the program now weekends, Friday nights, midnight on Fox, Sunday night on the CW at 10 o'clock, and after the 11 o'clock news on 12 News on Sunday. Don't forget, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. Stay tuned. Good night.